Before we begin, I want to frame this conversation clearly. What you're about to hear is not a tactic, a trick, or a framework designed to manipulate outcomes. These are confidential remarks, shared in the spirit of honesty, curiosity, and respect for how influence actually works between human beings. My name is Steve Camino, and everything I'm about to share comes from years of observing what happens when smart, capable people try to move important ideas forward and feel surprisingly stuck. So let me start with a question most of us already know the answer to, even if we don't like admitting it. Why is it that the harder we push an idea, the more resistance we seem to meet? You felt this before. You walk into a conversation certain you're right, prepared, well-intentioned, and somehow instead of alignment, you hit a wall. This isn't about intelligence. It's not about clarity. And it's not about effort. It's about something deeper, something human. From the very beginning, we're taught that influence comes from pushing. We perfect the pitch. We tighten the logic. We rehearse the objections before they even show up. And when that doesn't work, we apply more pressure. We assume that if we just explain it better, argue it cleaner, or push a little harder, the other person will eventually give in. But what usually happens is the opposite. We leave the conversation with more tension than when we started, wondering what went wrong. And the truth is, nothing went wrong with your effort. What failed was the approach. At the center of all of this is one powerful myth: the belief that your job in any important conversation is to convince someone. That belief quietly turns every interaction into a contest of wills. If I'm convincing, then someone else must be resisting. If I'm right, someone else must be wrong. And the moment a conversation becomes about winning, friction becomes inevitable. This myth is the single greatest source of resistance in high-stakes conversations, at work, in relationships, and even with ourselves. Here's the paradox that most of us learn too late. The more you try to get someone to act for your reason, the more they resist. Not because they're stubborn, not because they don't understand, but because your reason, no matter how valid, is not yet theirs. And human beings instinctively protect their autonomy, even from good ideas. This isn't a matter of style or preference. It's human psychology. When we sense an external force trying to change our mind, our nervous system reacts automatically. That reaction is called resistance, and it exists to protect our sense of agency. The harder the pressure, the stronger the pushback. So every time we apply force to an idea, we unintentionally strengthen the very resistance we're trying to overcome. If force creates resistance, then what actually creates alignment? What allows an idea to move without being pushed? What makes someone feel like a decision is theirs, rather than something done to them? The answer requires a shift in how we think about influence itself. The alternative to force isn't passivity, it's resonance. Resonant influence happens when you connect with someone's existing worldview, their needs, their challenges, their hopes. Instead of pushing an idea onto them, you tune into the frequency they're already on. And when that happens, your idea stops feeling like an external pitch and starts feeling like an internal realization, not something you gave them, but something they arrived at. Resonant influence reverses the flow of conversation. You don't start with your solution. You start with their world. You ask before you tell. You listen before you lead. The goal isn't to transmit information, it's to uncover insight. And somewhere in that shared understanding, alignment emerges naturally. Not because you forced it, but because you arrived there together. When you focus on convincing, you tend to get resistance, skepticism, and short-term compliance. But when you focus on resonance, something different happens. You build partnership instead of opposition, trust instead of defensiveness, relationships instead of transactions, and commitment that lasts longer than the conversation itself. This single shift changes not just how ideas land, but how people feel in your presence. So here's the principle I'll leave you with. Your goal is not to be convincing. Your goal is to be resonant, because when people feel understood, they lower their guard. And when they lower their guard, real influence begins. Not through force, but through frequency. If this idea resonates, sit with it. Notice how conversations change when you stop pushing and start tuning in. Influence doesn't come from volume. It comes from alignment. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'm Steve Colino, and these have been Confidential Remarks.